Hi everyone, it's Jerry. Let's have a look at a game from round 9 of the 2022 Tata Steel Masters. On the white end, Magnus Carlsen, and he's paired against Shakhriyar Mamedyarov. Opening-wise, it's a Catalan, often leading to rich play, often involving white gambiting a pawn. That's the case in this game. A few takeaways for me from this one are related to the structure and also move order or the timing of certain moves. If you're a teacher and you're looking for some good material on those topics, I think this is a good game to dig deeper into. I anticipate only scratching the surface with some of the structures I share, and it's probably for intermediate students, maybe beyond. So this check on b4, how do we deal with it? How do we block? It's with the bishop. White still has dreams of developing the queen knight to its favorite square. a5. Black is welcome to white initiating the exchange. The rook would be freed, and black would care more about that rook activity than having doubled b-pawns. There's an additional point, a secondary reason behind a5 that will be revealed soon enough. Both sides castle. And now on this move e3, not the most common 8th move. This is a moment I'd like to draw some attention to. More common than e3 is queen c2. And one of the top games you'll find with queen c2 is from 2020, Nce5 versus Carlsen. Carlsen's reply to queen c2, bishop captures bishop. Now, just moments ago, I said the queen knight has dreams of going to c3. Well, with the queen already developed, white continued to develop, recapturing with the queen knight in this case. Now, in this game, e3 was on board. First thing to note, d4 is now strengthened. And black cannot, should not, capture on d2 in this case. It's important not to treat e3 the same way as queen c2. Let's see why. Bishop captures bishop in this case would be bad for black, because white has a new way to recapture on d2, with the already developed knight. After knight f takes d2, note what's happening. Bishop's eyes are opened up, c4 is hit, the b-pawn is pinned, which means there is no b5 to defend the c4 pawn. And if there is no b5 to defend c4, there is no defending c4. White will soon win this pawn back and be better in really every way. All right, the short story here is don't bite on d2. Okay, in the game it's rook a6. First thought, you're off the diagonal, for me at least. You're off the diagonal. Another point is that the rook is now on a defended square, and that detail matters. That has an influence. That draws our attention to move order here. In the game, it's rook a6, and then next up, b5. Those two are not interchangeable if black wants to maintain control over c4 with a pawn. Let's see why. If black begins with b5, this is how white can react. a4. Let's go with c6. The structure gets broken down. We see a problem with having an unprotected rook on a8. White has just won a piece. Take the bishop, there goes your rook. If black tries to be clever at this moment, inserting this capture and in-betweener, hang on, once more we get to see this underdeveloping reply, underdeveloping recapture, and now the c6 pawn is pinned. Move order matters. Rook a6 first, queen c2 in the game, b5 a4, c6, black clings to the extra pawn. One of the questions I had for myself, I had many questions for myself in preparing for this video. So a lot of different structures, a lot of different stuff packed into this one game. One of the thoughts I had is, can white not consider one of those preemptive moves on this move move 9. Why not start with a4 here? You know, why wait for b5 to play a4? If white plays a4 right now, it's not as effective. Why do I think this? Well, it's because it's not creating tension. White is not in a position now to one day make a capture and free the rook. That's a nice positive for white to have. That's why it's normally better to wait for the pawn to be on b5 before playing a4. White doesn't have that in this position if you go with a4. How could black proceed if white goes with a4 in this position? I want to play out some moves so you can get a feel. This is primarily for players who may be playing from the black side here. We can get an idea as to how we can find some good squares for our pieces. This is as far as I want to take it. In this final position, white is the side who's actually up a pawn, but it will soon be won back. e5 is now in there. Since white doesn't have as much control over e5 anymore, black could get that in, and we can clearly see an open lane for that bishop. It will find a productive role soon enough. Okay, there is no a4 in this game. Instead, it is queen c2. We have the following structure on the black queen side, and some pressure now on b5. That is defended with rook b6. This is a fairly brief game, a 27 mover. Move 12 by Carlsen. If you'd like to go ahead, pause the video, see if you can find what white's next play is. Okay, here we go. e4. White does have a central majority, has had a central majority ever since move 4 by black. D takes c4, and now it is in motion. Maybe d5 or e5 nearby. From here, bishop e7. This was Carlsen's first think. He spent about 14 minutes on his next move. And this is where I spent a lot of time myself in trying to understand what Carlsen what was maybe running through his mind here. What other move, if he's spending so much time here, what was the other move he was considering? This isn't some only move position, so what were his candidate moves is something that crossed my mind at this moment. So an important stage in the game, for sure. His decision on move 13 is to play e5. A favorite move of AlphaZero. This is when AlphaZero hit the scene. We've seen this white pawn established on e5 time and time again. AlphaZero playing against, AlphaZero as white playing against, Stockfish, where Stockfish was playing the French defense, or even a Queen's Indian defense. e5 time and time again. It's a strong pawn to establish. It drives the king-knight away from its favorite square. It's often a catalyst for an attack against the black king side. May one day pave the way for the queen, taking up a nice post on g4 now that the knight is not there. So an additional point is that it fixes this pawn, so there still remains a question mark over black's light square bishop. Where is that open diagonal for the light square bishop? Okay. One of the downsides with e5, you do give up a very big square to the black pieces, namely d5. The knight hops right in there in this game. And only at this stage do we have white now capture on b5. Note the timing of this move. That was a possibility for a few moves now. A takes b5. Why is maybe now the time to go ahead and capture on b5? There's a lot to unpack in this one. These half moves, there's a lot to dig into. A couple things to note with this capture. It is not only white who is helped when you go ahead and capture on b5. It's true the rook is unleashed, But after this recapture, this is how it played out in the game. C takes B followed. You'll note that C6 is vacant. This knight has a jump on C6, exerting pressure on white's center. This bishop, just moments ago, I said it maybe has a question mark over its head. Maybe not so much anymore. It goes to B7 and functions on this long diagonal pretty well. There's a trade-off here. When white goes ahead and initiates the exchange on B5, the rook is helped, but so too are black's queenside minors. So, this 14-minute think by Carlsen on move 13. What was he considering? E5, the move played in the game, and probably this capture first. Why is that? Why was he going maybe back and forth between these two moves? What's the difference between the move order here? Let's have a look at it. The move played in the game, E5, knight D5, and now A takes B5. At this stage here, Mamedyarov had a think himself. He spent about 15 minutes. Black has an option. He doesn't have to go ahead and take on B5. This is how it played out in the game. Chop on B5, the knights were exchanged, and Carlsen ended up landing a skewer. He ended up winning some material. Black has another option at this point. He can duck the knight exchange if he wants. He could go into B4, hit the queen, and only then recapture. Maybe white takes on A5 straight away, or drifts over to this nice post on G4 opposite the king. Maybe this is, Mamedyarov was not welcome to this quick transfer of the queen, or simply had a preference for, playing down the exchange, having a nice structure and some good placement for the pieces. He assessed the structure in the game as maybe, he clearly preferred the structure he got in the game. Now, here's a question I had for myself at this moment right here. This is the moment Carlsen had his think. Why did he start with E5? If you switch the move order, if you start with A takes B5, and only then play E5, aren't you limiting black's replies, is something I thought to myself. Right? Because after knight D5 here, white's on move. White can now take the knight and then land the skewer. Why not go in that direction? Why not start with A takes B? Aren't you limiting black's options if you go with this and then that? Not quite. If you start with this move order, A takes B and then E5, black could take a detour. He doesn't have to go into D5. He could say, I'll go to E8. I'll find an active roll on C6. I'll have this open diagonal. I'll jump my knight into C6. There is a different route for the black knight if white begins with A takes B and then goes with E5. It could go back to that E8 square. Okay, in this game, E5 first, knight D5, and then we have A takes B5. Another point to note, another structure that could surface is, well, maybe instead of this capture, why doesn't Carlsen go ahead and take the knight on D5? Well, this structure, no, black is able to take towards the center. That's nice to have in there. It's true white would be able to land a skewer, but check out this resulting structure. It's true white gets the exchange, also has a passed pawn, but what's the way forward for white? The computer is still a fan of this position for white, but black has a pretty solid structure. It has a 2-to-1 majority. This pawn is under control. It's already a critical position for white. There's a key move for white to play in this position. If you don't play it, you might find yourself on your back foot for the remainder of the game. We'll see what that is at a later stage in the actual game. But this is another structure that's you really have to spend some time to try and assess. It's definitely unbalanced structurally, structurally, and we have the exchange. No, black is down the exchange here. Not a decision that Carlsen went for. At the end of the day, he captures on b5. C takes b, knight takes knight, pawn takes knight, and the skewer is on board. One other note here is if you go ahead and try and duck this skewer, capturing with the queen, there's a problem with that. The problem is knight g5, and that's going to hurt. Which one do you want? You want your queen or your king to fall? Okay, so it's e takes d5, bishop takes a5. This was not a blunder. You could see, I imagine many viewers watching the game live may have thought to themselves, "Oh, Mamedyarov blundered." No, he didn't. This was no accident. This was on purpose. He went in for this exchange sacrifice. He is giving value to what exactly? It's nice that this bishop has a nice post finally. Now that there's this capture on d5. This is the big positive for black. This majority on the queen side, and also the pressure on d4. With this sequence, with white going in for this material grab, black's pieces are getting developed. They're finding good posts. Queen on b6, knight on c6 are very nice posts. So how did play follow from here? We have rook to a8. This pawn is, it seems like it's up for grabs, but not exactly. If black goes ahead and meets this rook a8 move with the capture on d4, white can take. It's nice that this bishop's eyes are finally opened. And we have this rook d1 move. White's getting this pawn back soon enough and should be the one benefiting with more open files. Yeah, so not a good idea to go ahead and take on d4 here. In the game, we have h6. One of the better moves in this position in the computer's eyes, instead of h6, is to immediately carry on with b4 to get going straight away with this majority. The move played in the game is h6. The computer points out that white can look to give the exchange right back and try to break in on the light squares. However slight it is, h6, it does somewhat weaken g6. This is an interesting moment for white. This was worth considering, capturing the bishop and then playing queen to f5. Does hit the rook, and it paves the way for this e6 advance. I'll play out some moves here. These are considered some of the better moves. You can't even go ahead and take this pawn. There'd be a problem with the knight jumping into e5, so black would have to play this one. We could see that the light squares, white is giving back the exchange, but the light squares are being broken down with this sequence of moves. White being able to get in that e6 move is super disruptive to the light squares on black's king side. Not something that white went for. Instead, he doubled rooks. And we have from here bishop to e6. Once more, if there's this capture, we're going to have a similar story. The rook simply goes to d1 from a1 instead of f1. So no capture on d4 here. Instead, bishop to e6. Queen to d1. b4. And now we have a key moment in the game. I'll throw this one to you as a pop quiz. White to move, what would you play here? Feel free to pause the video. Okay, critical moment in the game. The move played, b3. It is, what's the first comment I can make about b3? It's never too late to challenge a duo. We see this right out of the openings in the game. You know, whenever there's a duo, it's often challenged. We are 20 moves into this game. It feels like we're in an ending now. b3 is an important move here. Let's see why. If white makes a passing move, let me make a move that maybe isn't 100% passing. You could see maybe many players make a move like h3. What might the reasoning be? Well, I have a new square for my king. I'm stopping a pin. Okay. There's a problem with h3, though. What's the problem? Black would be able to play b3. Note the value of b3. What is it doing? Well, it's a step closer to creating a passed pawn. Now, in the game, b3, c3 was on board. Black gets a passed pawn in this way. The big difference, black gets a connected passed pawn in the game. The big difference, though, if you were to play h3 here, if black gets in b3 himself, b4 opens up to not only the knight, but the bishop. Why is this a big deal? Let's see. I'm going to make some moves. Let me go with the rook exchange. Right? What does white do here as a follow-up? How do you move forward? I'm not sure how to even move forward here for white. Let's make another somewhat passing move. We could see this knight jump into b4. Once more, not quite sure how to improve for white. Let's say a pawn move. Look at the jumps by the knight. c2, d3. I even found a funny one, something that looks, something that's optically interesting. Knight a4, knight to a2. Anything stick out to you about this position? Check out this diagonal. That's pretty cool. A connect 7. This rook is cut off. And this bishop is ready to slip in here, and maybe nearby there can be a c3 advance. This isn't super far-fetched. You could see many players go ahead and make a useful looking move like h3 and not appreciating how valuable it is for black to have b3 in and b4 vacant for multiple pieces. That would be an amazing piece, a knight on b4. And it's not clear how white makes progress. This is a super solid construction. So, important moment, a moment Carlsen weighed carefully. He spent about 12 minutes on this move here, b3 on board. It has an influence on the duo. If white is able to capture and black recaptures, he'd have two connected passed pawns, but then again, this guy is ready to maybe advance. So for example, in the game, c3 was played. If black plays queen b5, we can have this capture. And now there's even a move like knight to h4, paving the way for a d5 advance. So yes, these two they certainly are scary, but this is hitting pretty fast. White is winning from this position. This knight maybe even has an eye on jumping into f5 if this bishop tries to blockade. Okay, it's a way forward if that structure comes about. In the game, what do we have? It is c3. What else can we have a look at? If black goes ahead and captures, how can white follow up? White can first kick the queen away from this d4 point, right? If you immediately recapture, right, black can now go ahead and win out on d4. So the idea here would be to meet c takes b3. Certainly one of the continuations white had to run the numbers on. What am I doing if black simply takes? Well, you kick the queen away from d4 and only then pick up the pawn. Okay, so in this game, c3 on board, connected passed pawn. From here we have rook a6, releasing some pressure on d4 so that this guy can now maneuver somewhere else. Where does he go? Knight e1, a best move. Looking forward to maybe c2, but more aggressively, that c3 square is one that comes to mind. You may even look forward to the f4 square one day. So put some more pressure on d5, but we have some action in the center now with f6, knight d3 straight away, f takes e5 follows, knight takes e5, knight takes knight, rook takes bishop, and after c2 we have one final move of this game, queen to e1, and black resigns. This pawn is just a step away from queening, but it's black is down material and is going to lose some more material soon enough. One of these two are going to fall. d5 is going to fall. There really isn't a good solution here. One of the lines I had to look at is knight to d3, but you could go ahead and take on d5. This is one of the fun variations to have a look at, I guess. If knight takes queen, right, we get the queen back. Discovered check. Take the queen. We're up a rook in this position. Ready to win the knight, win the pawn. That's not working. Anything else to have a look at? If knight c6, simply take on this square. Knight is hit. Bishop's ready to fall. This pawn is not dangerous enough. So white is completely winning at this point. Queen to e1, final move of this game. A very interesting one. As mentioned, a lot of different structures to try to wrap one's head around. Excellent game, a lot to learn from this one. Let's have a quick look at the tail of the tape on this one. There we go. We can see that this was a very high-level game. At the end of the day, Carlsen had an average centi-pawn loss of 11 to Mamedyarov's 33. Anyhow, as usual, feel free to leave any feedback to this video in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed it and maybe took a thing or two away. That's all for now. Take care.